Hello everyone, welcome. Let's now implement the scroll message lists to bottom functionality. Now the first question is, where should we add this functionality? We would like to add it here to our message list component, which contains a list of messages. We would like this component, whenever a new list of messages is received, we would like to trigger the scroll to bottom functionality. So how can we do that? We can, for example, leverage here the lifecycle hook OnChanges, and using OnChanges is very simple to implement the scroll into bottom of the last message functionality. We are going to provide an implementation for this and we are going to review it together. So let's start by reviewing the changes that we made to the message list component. We have defined here a template variable called list, and we have associated it to the whole list. So this was the only change that we made in the template. Let's now see how did we use this in the component. In the component, we have used the viewChild decorator to inject the list, the DOM element that corresponds to the list, into the list member variable. So now we have here a reference to the DOM element of the list. Now, what we really want to do here is we want to, on changes, detect if there were changes in the messages input property. If there were changes, so if a new message was defined or if we just displayed the screen for the first time, we want to retrieve the previous messages and the new messages. And we want to compare the length of these two arrays. If there is a change in the length of the two arrays, it means that a new message is available. So we are going to scroll that message into the screen. And we are going to call for that the scroll last message into view. We are going to explain set timeout in a moment. First, let's have a look at how can we scroll a message into the view. The base of the solution is the scroll into view DOM API. So if you have a DOM element in a panel and you want to make it visible, you can call scroll into view to it. So this is not a Angular specific API, this is a DOM API. The way that we need to use it is we need to call it on the last message of the list. So remember, this is a list of messages. We have here ng4, so we will have a list of messages and we need to apply scroll into view. We need to call it in the last list item of the list. So in order to obtain a reference to the last item of the list, which is the last message, we're going to first get a list of all the elements in that list. We are going to use again a plain DOM API, query selector all. So again, this is not Angular specific, this is simple DOM code. So we get a reference to all the list items, we get an array with all the messages, and we're going to use lodash to obtain the last element of that array. If that last element is defined, so this is just for security, we are going to call scroll into view, and that will trigger the scrolling of the message into the view. So at this point, if we hit Ctrl S, our application will reload. Let's have a look at it. If we now select the user Alice and we go to the first thread, you see we have already scrolled to the bottom. Now let's say that Alice writes hello Bob. As you can see, the panel is continuously being scrolled to the bottom, which is exactly what we wanted to implement. So now we have implemented our reducer function. We have the new message saved in memory on the client side, and it's already displayed to the user. But we have not yet sent the new message to the backend so that it can be visible by the other participants of the thread. That's what we're going to implement in the next lesson.